if you want.
I mean, how many people do you know you can get an adjustment in water safety plan? I mean,
Not very many places.
And you can lose it and come get another one.
yeah, how you doing?
All right.
All right.
Recording in progress.
This is Monday, February 12th, the meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, board meeting.
Yeah.
And we will start regular session and then adjourn into closed session shortly. So yeah, let's do a roll call first. Thank you.
Director Oglesby,
Here.
Director Adams,
Here.
Director Paul,
Here.
Director Eisenhart,
Here.
Director Edwards,
Here.
Vice Chair Riley,
Here.
Chair Anderson.
Well,
Here.
All board members are present.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have no additions and corrections to the agenda and take public comment on closed session if there is any.
Yes, is there anybody?
there
Waiting?
will be a correction to the open session agenda,
Okay.
which we can make at that time.
Chair Anderson, I have 2 members of public.
Okay, members of the public may address the board on item or items listed on the closed session.
Mr. Mayor, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Michael Bear. I would like to comment about LAFCO. I saw the letter that went out that they are choosing to appeal the decision by Judge Wills. And the thing that concerns me is I've heard from a couple of different sources that Cal-Am is going to pay those legal expenses. And so my question is, first, is that true? Second, is that legal? Seems unfair to me and should be illegal in that, Cal-Am is the beneficiary of the work that LAFCO's been doing to stop you guys. And they got hammered with having to pay the legal expenses for the previous legal proceedings. And if Cal-Am is saying, well, go ahead and appeal because we'll pay for it, it seems to, like if I'm sitting on the LAFCO board, it's like, well, what do we got to lose? And, that they're going to cause time delays and expenses for the district. And it seems like interference on the part of Cal-Am. So I don't know the process. I assume there's some kind of briefing, and I would hope that eager to hear what the district will be doing in response to that. And just as one final caveat, if you think about where does this income come from? Where does Cal-Am get their money? They get it from the ratepayers. So here are the ratepayers that are funding the opposition, as well as ratepayers to the water district. This is not the first time, it seems to me, that ratepayers are paying both sides of the legal argument. Is that legal? Can that argument be made? And, I don't know, the appeal, can that appeal be thrown out because of that? And maybe Mr. Laredo can let us know about that when he talks in the regular session after 6 o'clock. Thank you for all your efforts, and thank you for taking the time to listen to my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Chair Anderson, I have a caller on the line ending in 312. Caller, when you're ready, you may introduce yourself if you like.
Good evening, Margaret Ann Coppernall speaking. I concur with Mr. Bayer's remarks. Can the recent LAFCO court filing to appeal the court's decision be added to the resolution of necessities 83 findings. LAFCO claims the court made an error in requiring LAFCO to pay attorney fees for both sides. LAFCO also claims they filed the appeal action to save the public's finances. This is so ludicrous since CalAm inspired this appeal action by promising to indemnify LAFCO financially if they lose the appeal, meaning CalAm ratepayers will be held financially responsible yet again. The CalAm bias and collusion are glaringly obvious. While Judge Wills did not find bias in the previous hearing, there is sufficient evidence to show bias in this appeal filing, in my opinion. CalAm successfully appealed the Monterey County Superior Court permit denial, so CalAm is now confident it can again be successful. Please investigate the legality of this action, and if the appeal court judge is unduly influenced, to rule favorably for CalAm. I wish you the best and thank you for letting me comment this evening. God bless you in your work.
Thank you, Ms. Coppernoll.
Chair Anderson, I see no other raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now recess to closed session.
So that you'll be able to rejoin in the open session. If we kick you off, you won't be able to rejoin. Yeah, I gotta be over in Pebble Beach in the morning.
All right.
Yeah, I'm probably available after 11 until 4:30. How are you? Like the little. grass. Well, Mike and these are our auditors. I feel like we're good. Stephanie? Why do we have a call to discuss the
I
Ascent
just took
project?
one. Hmm,
What do you mean?
okay. It is 6:05. I'll call the regular meeting.
Recording in progress.
6:05, I'll call the regular meeting to order. Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, Monday, February 12th. Call to order and take a roll call.
Oh, yes. Director Oglesby. Here. Director Adams. Here. Director Paul.
Here.
Director Eisenhart.
Here.
Director Edwards.
Here.
Vice Chair Riley.
Here.
Chair Anderson.
Here.
All board members are present.
Okay, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There's one clarification that I will address when we hit item 13.
Okay. Thank you. Oral communications. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board on consent calendar, information items, closed session items, or matters not listed on the agenda? Please limit your comment to 3 minutes. The public may comment on all other items at the time they are presented. Do we have any hands raised?
Chair Anderson, I see no members of the virtual public. Oh, just 1 minute. We have a caller. Caller, when you're ready, if you'd like to identify yourself, please.
Yes, Margaret.
Hello, I'm so sorry. Is this the public comment?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Margaret Ann Coppernoll speaking. My concerns are LAFCO's appeal action to save the public's finances is preposterous, since CalAm inspired this appeal action by promising to indemnify LAFCO financially if they should lose the appeal, meaning CalAm ratepayers will be held financially responsible yet again. The CalAm bias and collusion are glaringly obvious, as is retribution for MPWMD upholding our sacred Constitution, voice of we the people. Judge Wills decided the case based on law and justice and was not made in error, as LAFCO alleges. Second, CalAm applied for a permit to the State Lands Commission to construct a 4.8 MGD desalination plant. CalAm does not have an approved DIR for this smaller facility. The CPUC already denied CalAm permission to construct this too costly 4.8 MGD desal plant. Third, the CPUC has not issued a decision on the water supply and demand proceeding still pending before it. And fourth, environmental justice. No desal pipeline should be constructed underneath aquitars. The test slant well extracts aquifer water from the dune sands freshwater aquifers, lowering groundwater levels and exacerbating seawater intrusion in contravention of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act whose purpose is to rectify, not further impair, the Salinas Valley groundwater basin's critically overdrafted groundwater aquifers. Marine life and ESHA are at risk. Marine animals depend on the Monterey Bay Cliff area to spawn eggs in a low brine area. Heavy desal brine discharge would be continuous, fatally affecting fish eggs' survival, whereas recycled water discharge is intermittent and regulated. Fishermen and restaurants would be adversely economically devastated. Carmel River ESHA, steelhead trout, etc., suffered extensive environmental harm. Marina already has more than its fair share of industry, such as the landfill and dump, 2 public water agencies, former Fort Ord ammunitions and World War II asbestos-laden barracks removal, and only recently removed the CMEX sand mining operation that eroded beaches as far south as Malibu, causing homes to collapse. Western Soy plover nesting areas threatened. Objections should be raised to the State Lands Commission regarding these problematic issues, as no permit application should be evaluated before these questions are resolved. Oh, thank you for letting me put my input in there, and God bless you. Good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Coppenall. Do you see anyone else?
Michael.
Michael.
Michael Bear, just one moment, please. Mr. Bear, when you're ready.
Good evening. I would like to echo the same sentiments as Ms. Coppernall related to the State Lands Commission. I recently learned that Cal-Am is applying for their permit, trying to check off all the things on the to-do list for to get their desal plan. And the most salient point, I think it's just premature for them to be considering it. And I think the number one item to consider is the supply and demand hearings that will be taking place over the next 4 or 5 months. Before the PUC renders a decision, on whether it's necessary, on what size would be required, all of that stuff. How can they be issuing a permit? And also to segue off that point that she made, that the 4.8, which is what they're asking for now, was never on the approved list of the 2018 EIR process, which was so long ago and so lengthy. And Cal-Am itself argued that the 4.8 was not feasible financially because of economies of scale. So that requires, my understanding is that requires a supplemental EIR if you were even going to, apply for it. Plus all the environmental justice issues, all the environmental issues, the impact of the aquifer, everything she mentioned. There are so many issues, and I would hope that the Water Management District would weigh in and make these points to the State Lands Commission, to advocate that, at this time, more information will be forthcoming as long as the process has been. They definitely need to hear more from the public about the environmental concerns, the environmental justice concerns, but also to wait for that PUC decision related to supply and demand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Chair Anderson, I have Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready.
Good evening. I also have some concerns related to everything that was mentioned, but I do want to thank Dave Stolt and also M1 for their excellent testimony at the CPUC regarding supply and demand. I hope that goes a long way to convince them about the reality of the situation. And I'm sure you're all aware of what's going on with state lands and the need to respond to that and make sure that Cal-Am isn't given a pass before they're supposed to be having the CPUC approve or disapprove this project. Thank you so much, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Schiavone.
Chair Anderson, I see no other raised hands.
Thank you. So we have the consent calendar next. Are there any items that any board members would like to pull?
I have 3.
Item 3. And okay,
You could either take the comment now, or you could have a vote on the remaining items that were not pulled and then consider that separately.
let's take the comment on item 3 now.
Yeah, it's just a comment and a question. So this is on the, this is on page 11 of our packet, and this is on the Finance and Administration Committee's recommendation for up to $20,000 in new district water conservation equipment. How successful are we in getting the word out to get those these wonderful products known to the public and get them distributed to those who ask for them?
The items are actually primarily used at our outreach events such as Earth Day, Good Old Days, and various other fiestas and outreach things. So we take those to those events. We also have them available here in the office. So we get people every day that come in and ask for a shower head or, you know, the hose nozzles and that kind of thing.
Does that include things like when the West End has their?
Yes.
Do we have a?
We have a booth there. We have a booth at the fair. We have,
So all they have to do is say that they're within the.
Yes. And they
jurisdiction
have
of the
access to
district?
all the goodies that we have. At our administrative committee meeting, Director Edwards asked that we do a presentation for the board at some point to give you an idea of what devices we have available. And so we will be doing that at a future board meeting.
Yeah, I think this is a very small budget item for such a very impactful, I mean, I don't know how impactful, you would know better than I.
It's very important.
Yeah,
So-
and I know I say this all the time, but I really want to, love to see this getting out in the public more and being able to offer these to folks. I mean, I just think it makes such a difference, especially in the
Yeah.
long run. I'm so grateful for
Thank you.
the fact that you do this.
Okay, thank you,
I second.
thank you. We have Director Adams making a motion and Director
Eyes and heart.
Eyes and heart, eyes and heart. Wait a second, thank you. Can we have a vote? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the item is passed. Consent agenda. So on to the general manager's report.
Super. Wait for Sarah to get the
Actually, I can't
presentation up.
Hey.
Here we go. So as a preview, before we look at, can you put it in slideshow mode? Before we look at compliance with the state order, I just wanted to show you this photo. Recent Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce luncheon, recognizing our 15 years of membership in the chamber. And so hopefully at some point we'll get that framed and put on the wall. And Stephanie Locke was shown there.
This is the Monterey.
The Monterey Peninsula Chamber, so the bigger chamber. We're members of Monterey Peninsula Chamber, the Pacific Grove Chamber, and the Carmel Chamber. And Salinas, we joined Salinas this year, yeah. So,
We should get a red frame for Stephanie's hair.
all right. So just a couple of things to talk about. Uh-oh. Here we go. This is just the two major portions of the Monterey Peninsula Water Resource System, but I wanted to highlight that the Carmel River actuals is closely following the targets. So this is a good sign that at least what we built into the quarterly water budget reporting, which will be ultimately the full 3,376 acre feet that diversions from the river are following what's been budgeted. We got way out of whack last year and left water in the river. So
And
one of the things that we're eyeballing
And this is as of when exactly?
4 months into the water year. So through January 31st. Next slide, which includes some of the other projects. Two things I want to point out here is you see the first occurrence of table 13 water rights. Budgeted 0 because we weren't counting on rain, but when you have rain, that water right kicks in, which is a good thing. The unfortunate thing is there's no change in Sand City desal. So there's been no production from the plant since pretty much Christmas Eve. And so we'll be looking into that a little bit. And then this is production for customer service. So that's the 4 months. The highlight here is that we're 44 acre feet over last year for the first 4 months. But last month we were 92 acre feet over last year for the first 3 months. So that nexus between some irrigation demand during the winter months, our rain started in December last year and pretty much kept going December, January, February. Rains didn't really start this year until January. So I do think we're seeing the bump from the rainfall, meaning less irrigation. At least I'm hoping that's what it is. But it is, as I said, coming back into line with last year, whereas we started out quite a bit higher. On rainfall, recorded rainfall, we're at 9.5 inches total through the end of January, which is 85% of long-term average. But I can tell you in February, here we are at February 12th, we've already had more than 5 inches in February. So we already exceed the long-term average for February. So then I think we're expecting rain again in 3 days. Yeah. So we continue to inject an ASR, even though it was bright and sunny today. So we'll talk about that one in a second. And here you can see the most recent blue bars, especially the very tall one, is daily rainfall. This is measured at San Clemente gauge, where the old dam used to be. And then the red line is cumulative. And so cumulative, we're just under 15 inches, which is pretty good. And that'll be very, very close to the long-term average. On unimpaired flow, you can see that the blue bars are still really low through the end of January, only 30% of long-term average. Expect that to change going forward now with the late January rains and then what we've seen in early February. Usable storage, we're about 90% of system capacity. And then I mentioned ASR. You can see that we really didn't get started until January, and then we had to shut down for a few days. Then the rains came back, and we've been injecting ever since. So this is actually only through last Thursday evening. So here we were at 191 acre feet, but just through the last 3 days, we're probably went through 220 today. So we're averaging, roughly 13 acre feet per day when we're injecting. I would expect us now to, if it does rain in the next few days, this will just keep going for possibly 2 weeks, which is a good sign. And as John Lear will tell you, the perfect weather situation is a moderate rainstorm about every 7 to 10 days. And that just kind of keeps things going. I prefer not to have trees come down and mudslides and things, so moderate's just fine. We don't need the intensive, the one that we had last week. So that concludes this general manager's report.
Okay. Report from the district council?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, just a couple of questions to the GM before district council start. Hey, Dave, can we get State Lands Commission, CalAm, on the agenda so we can talk about them?
So I've been in communication with the State Lands Commission. There are things in the application that I've not been able to see yet. They've extended their comment filing a couple of weeks to later March, but we're up against a clock. And the only outreach to the community that's happened on this is their environmental justice outreach. So that's where it began with, letters to certain affected community groups. But it is a full-on ask for the long-term lease for the permanent slant walls.
Okay, and my next question, quick one. Can we get some on the agenda about with the CPUC and the adjustment to the plant? The 4.8 versus the 6 point whatever? People have been asking about that. Do we need to get an EIR? We don't have to talk about it tonight, but put something down so we can be able to talk about it between you and Mr. Laredo. Future agendas or whatever.
Sure.
Get those concerns. That's all I got, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up on the Lands Commission. Do we expect to file or participate in that action? To be determined? I don't.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
we have, similar to some comments that were made earlier, there's one thrust of action that we're talking about. I do not think it's really in the district's interest to get involved on environmental justice issues. We don't have a whole lot to say on that. We have a lot to say, but it's not really consistent with our purpose. But the other issue of why are you considering a long-term lease for reconfigured slant wells that haven't been fully environmentally vetted is of very strong interest of the district. So I'll know more in a couple of days after speaking with it.
And we'll hear more later. I'm just curious.
Yeah, but we may have to file something before we meet as a board again, because the request, it's a very loose request. It's file your comments on this project solicited by their environmental justice person. But there's no other request for comments. So whatever comments you have, this would be the time to get them in. So that's where I think we need to say something. But the formal process for commenting on the lease, I don't know what they're doing. And we're members of what's called OSCAR, which is the State Lands Commission database. And I can't seem to get it to show us any materials from the application. So I've got some requests into State Lands, but they extended the deadline to later in February. And if we get our act together, we'll get comments in.
Thank you.
Okay, District Council, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board did meet in closed session at 5 p.m. There were 5 items on the agenda. One item was not able to be considered within the time allotted, and that's been trailed till after this meeting, the public session portion of the second meeting, and that had to do with the general counsel's performance evaluation. The 4 items that were considered was a report on labor negotiations for your general staff and management units, but no reportable action was taken there. There are 3 items of pending litigation. The district's lawsuit that's been brought by the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association, no action was taken there. on two items of interest I'd like to report on. The first was your fourth item in the closed session. That's Water Management District's action against California American Water Company. That's the eminent domain lawsuit that's been brought in furtherance of Measure J. And that's just a status report there. The board did want us to apprise you and the public that the CalAM did exercise a peremptory challenge under CCP 170.6 to challenge Judge Wills, who had been the assigned judge. So that's back to the Superior Court now to decide who will be the judge that presides over that matter. There's no other action that's reportable on that. And then finally, the action of the district's lawsuit against LAFCO and CalAM. As we read in the paper, there's been an notice of appeal that's been filed by CalAM on the 8th, and notice of appeal that was filed by LAFCO on the 9th. The district now is in a position to decide whether or not it will maintain a cross appeal, because not all matters that were in the judgment in that case were in favor of the district. And the board did resolve to authorize a cross appeal against LAFCO and CalAM. Motion by Director Paul, second by Director Edwards, and the vote was 7 in favor and no directors voted against. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Do we have any reports from directors on trips or conferences?
I do, yes. I attended the Water Master meeting earlier in February. There was a very interesting discussion. There was an attorney, we have a new attorney there. They were asked to present some options on how the Water Master might be able to raise some funds to support their own ideas about maintaining the basin, increasing the water volume, water input to the basin, and to preserve the viability of the basin. One of the, I just pass this along now for information, but I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about it. One option was to ask the Water Management District or Marina Coast Water District to partner with them to seek some grant applications. They have no right through the court structure that created the Water Master. They don't have the authority and standing to apply for grants, but they were looking for maybe a partnership with the two public agencies that are closest to them in order to, they would do some research on what they were interested in, but still, it was to be asking maybe our district or Marina Coast Water District to work with them for some grants or some options in that area. The second thing that was very interesting was the zone assessment capability of this district. And they actually suggested that the overlying area of the Water Master be designated a zone for assessment to perhaps pay for some needs of the Water Master. My comment at the time was the Seaside Groundwater Basin provides water to a much larger area than just the overlying landowners. And that if there were going to be a revenue structure of some kind based on assessments, it would probably be a much larger area than just the Water Master boundaries that are for the Seaside Groundwater Basin. It was just a comment at the time. They're going to go back to the drawing boards and bring back other ideas. But I thought those two things, partnership for grants and maybe a zone assessment, they're going to want to pursue this, and we're in the chuck wagon for that activity if anything is going to happen. The last thing I want to report is that we've been meeting at the Monterey 1 water chambers, and they do not have instant hybrid resources available. It's going to be a cost. City of Sand City offered their space available at no cost. So we've decided to now meet in public in the future at Sand City City Hall and have hybrid meetings. So those were the three things. Very interesting meeting. And a good turnout, big turnout, which we normally don't get a big turnout.
Wonderful.
It was a fun discussion because we were talking solutions to problems, not just problems.
Do you have a question from?
No question,
Oh.
just to add, what I did last month is attend Seaside City Council meeting, he gave me an update on water and listen to them talk about how they got their entitlement. That was a big thing there, but that was one thing. I also attended the Water Master with George. I'm his alternate, but don't worry, they didn't pay me. I'm his alternate. Something happened at that meeting that I like to have brought to our meeting. They talked about the health of the Seaside Basin. They gave a report on it. After looking at that, I think this board should, and the public, should see that report and see if it's updated or are we missing something? They say they need a well over there, F10 replaced. Now, I know we're talking about putting another well in place, but that report was big, it was eye opener, but it,
Yeah, so the well is gonna go to Water Supply Planning Committee.
okay,
And it has a little bit of the same earmarks as forward deed number 9 that we agreed to partner in replacing. Forward 10, that discussion was, we own it, so we would be responsible for destroying it, but we don't really need it. So if they want to replace it, it would probably be Marina Coast Water District as the GSA person, because this is outside of, actually outside of the basin. They might want to be in, so it has all the earmarks of what we did with the previous well and maybe cost sharing on destroying and replacing, but yeah, it'll go to water supply planning first.
okay. And when could we possibly get an update from us about the Seaside Basin health?
That's a great question because there's been all sorts of discussion about leakage.
Yes,
But the modeling is only as good as the data that goes into it. And there's a difference of opinion over some of the boundary conditions. And you could make an assumption of just a very minor tweak as to what's happening on the northern boundary condition that completely changes the results about pace or quantity of leakage. But I think it was probably the annual seaside seawater intrusion report, the SI report. I'll sit down with our water resources people. We should at a minimum bring maybe the executive summary of that report to the board just for your information.
okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Public hearings. Here. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is item number 10, the consider second reading and adoption of ordinance number 194, amending Rule 11 and adding Rule 23.10 to establish a water entitlement for the city of Seaside. Ordinance number 194 establishes a water entitlement for the city of Seaside for the Ascent Seaside project. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that project in another slide. The water entitlement is a discrete quantity of water that's designated by ordinance to a specified water entitlement holder. And these capitalized terms are all in our Rule 11 definitions. The entitlement in this case is based on a temporary assignment of Seaside's banked water credits from its in lieu groundwater storage program, which was recognized by the courts. That Seaside started using recycled water in place of groundwater to irrigate their golf courses. Next. So this ordinance will establish a water entitlement of 13 acre-feet annually, which translates to 12.09 acre-feet available for water permits. This entitlement will enable CalAm to produce Seaside's water credits from wells within the Seaside groundwater basin And as a condition of this ordinance, Cal-Am has to amend its water distribution system permit to increase production by 13 acre feet. So this entitlement is going to be used to issue water permits for the Ascent project, which is a 10-building workforce rental housing development at Broadway and Terrace Street. So it's a very huge, and we're very supportive of trying to see housing get built. So the project will need approximately 11 acre feet of water. So there will be a little bit left over if it's a mixed use project, so there is a commercial component. They may want to assign whatever's left to that commercial component, but this entitlement gives them enough water to get the project done and meters set. This evening, I just wanted to bring to your attention, there were a couple of very minor edits made to the ordinance after first reading. These were reviewed by district council. In your packet at your desk tonight, there was I did a highlighted version for you to be able to see what the changes were. Again, Council Laredo looked at these changes and determined that they were not anything that would stop second reading and adoption. Yeah, that one right
I saw it earlier.
Finally, CEQA. Tonight, we have to do a CEQA action on this. The Monterey County Superior Court concluded that its adjudication decision included environmental determinations related to the Seaside Groundwater Basin and the adjudication of the rights therein. So in this case, there is a statutory exemption that would apply, and that's based on the environmental determination of the courts. So this evening, the recommendation is that you approve the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 194, which amends Rule 11 and adds 23.10, establishing a water entitlement for the city of Seaside. And as part of that recommendation, staff should be directed to file the CEQA notice of exemption with the county clerk. And that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Madam Chair, thank you. Stephanie said a little bit of water might be left on that. That water have to stay with that property. Does it? I want to make that clear because some people on Seaside City Council think they can get more water down the road.
No.
So,
Yes, this ordinance is specific to the properties that make up the Ascent project. So it cannot be used anywhere else.
and my final question, when are y'all gonna get that last piece, the distribution system done? Let's make it clear to the public and me that it's going to be done, and it's not going to be done 6 months from now.
I have not received an application at this point. I do have a meeting tomorrow between the owners, Ascent owners and Cal-Am to talk about the application. So we're trying to move forward with it right now. I am hoping that we will be able to set an administrative hearing in early March. And if we can get that hearing done before, it takes 30 days after the second reading before the ordinance becomes effective. So my hope is they will both happen at the same time. It'll be taken care of.
And if they're not done, what happens?
I have to have an application before I can process a hearing. So
And we have to have an amendment before we can process a permit. And you need a permit before you can set the meter.
So y'all need to set some dates and deadlines.
Well, I think what it just said is we need to have a motion.
Well, if you want a motion, I'll give a motion, but I want to put it in.
This
Let's
only
set some
takes care of
deadlines.
one of 3 outstanding items, but yeah, take care of this one, please.
Yes, I take care of that. If nothing from the public, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this.
you need to take public comment.
Yeah, that's why I said that, nothing from the public.
Thank you, Board. Sherry Damon, City Attorney for the City of Seaside. I just wanted to, I had a chance to look at the revisions. They are very minor in the grander scheme and acceptable to the city. I wanted to thank Stephanie Locke for all of her patience and persistence, and actually all staff for their persistence in helping move this forward. And I really look forward to your continued support. This project is huge for the city of Seaside, and it's actually, I think, a really great example how all the agencies can work together to move housing, and this kind of housing in particular, over the line and get her done, so to speak. So thank you so much for your support.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Chair Anderson, I do have Susan Schiavone as a raised hand.
Thank you.
Susan, when you're ready.
Hi, I just want to thank everyone who made this happen. I know it goes back some time to attaining the recycled water for the golf course and all the way up to providing water for this project. It's a great development. It's going to benefit Seaside quite a bit and meet its housing needs. And it is, as the attorney said, a great example of agencies working together for the benefit of the community. Thank all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Scibone.
Chair Anderson, I see no other raised hands.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make the motion that we approve this item, and just a quick thought on the second, once I get it.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Hey, I want to thank staff and City of Seaside for getting together on this and getting it done for the people. You know, big thoughts about water flowing down Seaside on Broadway, been a big issue, and getting that project done. But I just want to thank you all. Thank you.
On the second, Chair, I do want to thank staff. You know, this started, we've been trying to get water to the SIP project for, I don't know, about at least 4 years when it first was thought about, and you guys understand what's going on with Cal-Am. But then our city attorney and our acting city manager, Roberta Greathouse, came up with this idea about how do we not even wheel water, but how do we wheel water off Fort Ord down in Muni and cut a pipe down Broadway? That's the thinking of how to get the water there, right? That makes sense. But I want to thank, general manager for being open to this concept over the last, I don't know, 10, 11 months, if not longer, because this actually moves and provides up to 106 families with affordable housing. It's not just water. These are families that are going to live in these buildings. And then the extra water will provide for several small businesses to either open up in Seaside or expand, because I believe it's mixed use with about 5,000 square foot of space, maker space, office space. So we're talking about economic development, and we're talking about building affordable housing downtown in our downtown area. So I want to thank this last thought is for our council for making what I consider, you know, in his words, minor, but important corrections, because that's what he wants to do to make it a more stronger document. So I want to appreciate your look at that. But we want to remember that this is about families moving into more affordable workforce housing. And I want to thank the board for being open to this concept. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Oglesby. Anybody else? Comments?
Well, we are thrilled to actually see an affordable housing project be able to go forward. So bravo to all those who made it happen.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing quickly. This was my first understanding of this extra water that may not be used. So I'm trying to figure out what happens if it's not actually used. And so maybe that's something we come back down the road, but you don't want to just leave it there on that property. If it
There
can be
won't be that much extra.
to do anything with, really.
Right. The important thing is that meters can get set.
Yeah.
Cover Josh's ears, but once those meters are set, you can also get your own allocation of water through those meters to projects. So if somebody comes into the mixed-use commercial space and you need now more than 13 less losses, there's a way to get it.
Okay. I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. So what's the standard that allows us to pass today as opposed, given the changes that we made since the first reading?
The key would be if the changes affected the scope or effect of the ordinance. And these changes are for clarification purposes, but the scope of the ordinance and the effect of it has not been modified at all.
Perfect. Excellent.
All right.
And that's quick, my compliments to the builder, the project sponsor, for wanting to put forth this kind of project. So, to them too.
I just want to applaud the city of Seaside. This is one of the biggest issues that we have throughout all of Monterey County. And to be able to creatively step up to the plate and make it happen is really wonderful. So thank you to you and all of the staff and people who have worked on this to make it happen. Thank you.
And I'd like to point out, because the mayor's being a little modest, their housing element is the only one of the 6 jurisdictions that we've seen that they're actually close to satisfying.
That's fabulous.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add that these parcels, some of them have been, and Alvin's been here longer than me, but some of them have been blighted, vacant for 30, 35 years.
That's
Right. And before then, it was a place that you didn't want to go. So the pit, what you know about the pit? So, so what I'm saying is you guys are not only the housing, but you change the community, if that makes sense, on a piece of property that's been blighted for about 30 or 40 years. So thank you so much.
That's wonderful to hear. So terrific.
Just want to follow up on Dave Stoltz's comment about the housing elements. I listened to the Pacific Grove City Council meeting and looked at the notice they got back on their housing element, and they have so much more work to do, a lot, and it's gonna be just a ton of work and take time. So yeah, it is. It's not quick or easy.
Do we have a
You have a motion.
motion? It's,
and-
I
but
forgot
this
about
does
it.
require,
We already did.
this does require a roll call vote.
All right.
Okay.
Um,
Director Oglesby,
Aye.
Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Eisenhart,
Aye.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes,
Vice Chair Riley,
Aye.
Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
I know you're all here for the annual comprehensive financial report, but we've got one more item before we get to that.
Should I go ahead? Madam Chair, it's the annual Fix a Leak Week resolution. So this is March 18th through 24th, 2024. And go ahead, Sarah. So every year the EPA does a Fix a Leak Week, and every year we come back to you and have a resolution to call out this week in March. So in general, the concept is that for 1 week, we want people to focus on looking for leaks around their homes. A household leak can waste nearly 1 trillion gallons of water annually nationwide. So it's a big deal. So marking our calendars for the EPA's annual Fix a Leak Week is important. And remember that you can always fix leaks. In fact, we want you to do that all the time. So we're looking for both indoor and outdoor leaks. So find and fix them. To check for leaks in your home, you first need to determine if you're wasting water. And you can do that by checking your water meter before and after a 2-hour period of time where you don't use any water in your house. Most water meters have a little triangle that turns if water is running through it. So if you can find your meter, and sometimes our meters around here are buried deeply under dirt and whatnot, but if you can get to your meter and you can see whether or not either the numbers turn or the little triangle turns, you may have a leak. So you need to then try to figure out where that leak is. Next. At the Water Management District and at CalAm, we do offer little things like this, which is a leak detector kit, and there's a photo of that on the PowerPoint here. It is actually 2 dye tablets that you put in your toilet tank, leave it alone for a few minutes, go back and check and see if there's any color that's leaking into the bowl. And if there is, then you know that there's probably a leak in your toilet. So if that's the case, the number one reason that would happen is you have a faulty toilet flapper. And I love my picture on here because that red thing is a toilet flapper in your toilet tank. They do eventually go bad, and it's kind of a silent leak where you're not really aware of the fact that your toilet is leaking, and they're very easy to fix. If you end up buying a replacement flapper, the district and CalAm have a rebate of up to $15 to pay for that flapper, or you can just come by our office and we'll give you one. So this is a universal flapper. The best thing to do is to bring your flapper with you so you know that you have the right size, and that includes if you go to Home Depot or any of the other hardware stores, take it with you so you know you get the right size. Faucets. Old and worn faucet washers and gaskets eventually go bad as well, causing leaks. There are many tutorials available online on how to fix a leaky faucet. And both the Do-It-Yourself Network actually has a list that you can go through that'll show you how to do these things. And YouTube, of course, has many videos that will help walk you through how to fix your own faucets. Shower heads, again, those can be fixed by making sure there's a tight connection between the shower head and the pipe. Pipe tape or Teflon tape is also something that will help to reduce leakage around where the shower head connects. And I actually was going to have a string of that today with me, but I didn't get any. So, and for more complicated valve leaks in the showers that drip when not in use, contact an experienced handy person or licensed plumber to come and fix your leaking shower. Outdoors, if you have an in-ground irrigation system, check it each spring before use to make sure it wasn't damaged, or hire an irrigation professional certified by WaterSense labeled program to inspect it for you. Also check your garden hose for leaks and its connection to the spigot. So those are some areas that will have leaks. And you can replace the nylon or rubber washer to ensure that you have a tight connection on the hose. If your leaks are still running and you can't find them, then you can call a professional. If you're going to replace the fixtures such as your toilets, shower heads, and whatnot, look for the WaterSense symbol. And this is the symbol that's up on the screen right now. That meets certain criteria so that it's efficient and it will do the job to save water. And you can also take advantage of our tremendous rebate program, and you can get the applications for that at montereywaterinfo.org. And my addition this year is the Stay Informed slide. So you can purchase and install a smart flow meter on your water line. Smart flow meters are one of our newer rebates, and they can be attached to either the main water line, or you could just attach it to the irrigation water line. And it provides real-time information on your phone or computer. These are 2 examples of different smart flow meters. We do have a rebate available of up to $200 for these devices. So this evening, the staff recommendation is that the board adopt resolution 2024-02, declaring the week of March 18th through 24th, 2024 to be Fix a Leak Week in the Water Management District.
And I just want to add for listeners out there that you can also make an attempt to fix your neighbor's leak if you happen to notice an irrigation system without an aerator on it, or possibly it's a second home and the owners aren't around very much. Feel free to go to our website and report it as waterways, and we'll go ahead and contact the owner, try to fix that leak.
Good point. Thank you.
Hey, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh,
My question was about,
It's in the red folder.
my question is about these home leak Do you have to get a plumber to hook them up? I'm looking at that, look like it's between the pipes.
Some do and some don't. So
Okay.
some can easily be installed by the homeowner. Some will require a professional plumber to come out and install. And depending on where they want to put it, if they're talking about doing it at the meter, right after the meter, Cal-Am may also want to be involved. So I think if it's one of those that's real easy to put in, you can do it yourself, but there are some that are in line. One of those two is, and what it does, that one does is, when it detects a leak, it'll actually shut the water off.
Okay, yeah, that's why.
So that's a good one. That's,
And I see a rebate up to $200,
Yeah.
so you could pay the plumber with that, I guess. So, okay, thank you.
So you're right. So I had a couple questions about that too. So going back to even the slide before. So to get rebates, the applications online can folks submit the application online, or do they have to come in?
Good question. Right now, we don't have the online submissions open, but we should be doing that in the next several months. Right now, what they would need to do is download the form, fill it out. We need to have the receipts also. So, you've got to upload or attach those. You can submit those by email to conserve@mpwmd.net.
Okay. And then the second question is on the up to 200. So what's that's a significant rebate. Obviously, these are expensive products. So what's the standard? Just that you spent at least 200 would get you 200 rebate?
Exactly. We won't rebate more. It's the cost of the equipment or up to $200. So it may cost more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this next item is the long-awaited annual comprehensive financial report.
We have
we
taken
don't
them.
need to vote?
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Steph, you gave in.
That was the presentation. We need your vote.
I move to adopt the resolution for the
I'll second that.
weekly adoption of fix a leak, yes.
Second.
Yeah, I second it. And then public comment?
Yeah, public comment, I was going to say. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
Chair Anderson, I see no raised hands.
Okay. Thank you. So we can take a vote.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. Thank you. Thank you, yes. Item 11.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's a long-awaited item.
12.
So this item before you is to receive the annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR, for the fiscal year ending 22-23, and the results of the audit. So it's going to be a short two-part presentation. I'll go over the audited financial statements, and then we have the auditors here with us who will go over any highlights, GASP pronouncements, or any communication to the board that they might want to highlight. Before I start, I want to acknowledge that the team had to burn midnight oil to bring this item to you for today's meeting, and no pun intended, because some of us were literally without power in the last 2 weeks or so. So I'll get started. So what's an ACFR? An ACFR is a set of financial statements that comply with the accounting requirements that are established by the Government Accounting Standards Board, or GASB. The GASB establishes accounting and financial reporting standards for state and local governments, including special districts, that follow the generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. And these financial statements are audited by a certified accounting firm. So GASB also provides the standards for the content of the ACFR. The ACFR has 3 sections. The first one The introductory section, it provides an overview of the district and the finances. The second section, the financial section, presents the basic financial statements along with the notes. It also has the management discussion and analysis and the independent auditor's report. And then the statistical section that provides additional trends about the finances, that might better inform the reader about the district's activities. So the district's financial statements were audited by a licensed CPA firm, Clifton Larson Allen. And the auditor has issued an unmodified or a clean opinion, which means that the district's finances are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Further, no material weakness was identified in the internal controls over financial reporting, and no instances of non-compliance or reportable conditions that are required to be reported under GAAP. There were no instances of that.
I know. Now at this point, I'm gonna turn it down to medium or maybe.
What was that?
Sorry about that. So the district has received a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting for the fiscal year end 21-22, and will be applying for another application for fiscal year 22-23. So this slide provides a summary of the audited financial statements. It's the statement of revenue and expenditures. Yeah, it would be nice to move that along the side. Thank you. So total revenues for the district stood at about 28.02 million, and total expenditures stood at 27.7 million. That led to a net change in fund balance of about 300,000. Now, this change in fund balance is lower than the prior fiscal year because the district, excuse me, paid off debt related to the installment purchase agreement that it had for the aquifer storage and recovery project. And that you can see in the third line from below. So this is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. So the district has three funds: mitigation, conservation, and water supply. And this is a balance sheet for all three funds. Total assets stood at about 25.27 million. This includes cash, securities, and capital investments. And total liabilities stood at about 3.4 million. This is mostly accounts payable type of liabilities. And there was a little bit of deferred tax inflow. So that brings the fund balance to about 21.6 million, which includes all of our reserves. So the ACFR provides two different sets of financial statements. One's called the government fund financial statements, which is what we saw in the previous two slides. And then it has what's called the government-wide financial statements, which has a long-term focus. And this includes all the CalPERS liabilities, and it also includes the reclamation wastewater project as a proprietary fund under the business tab activities, the middle column. So for the government-wide financial statement of net position, the district had 68.4 million approximately, which is an increase of about 8 million from the prior fiscal year. And most of this increase is tied to capitalization of like projects, including water reserves. So that's what's contributing to the increase to the net position, a lot of it. So this slide shows a breakdown of the revenues. And as you can see here, the biggest chunk is water sales at 43%, followed by user fees, 23%, water supply charge, and then property taxes. And then this slide shows a breakdown of our major expenditure sources. Again, biggest expenditure is water purchase, followed by project expenditures, then salary costs and debt service. So that debt service cost at 10% is much higher than prior fiscal years because the district paid off debt related to the installment purchase agreement. And this slide just provides a very high-level overview of our long-term pension and other post-employment benefit liabilities. The OPEB liability, as it's called, is related to our healthcare plan. And our total PERS liability stood at about 7 million, and OPEB liability was a little under 5 million. And our PERS liability is like a variable rate debt, which fluctuates according to the performance of the CalPERS portfolio. But this item was covered in detail on the December 4th meeting. And this relates to GASB 68 and 75 pronouncements. So I won't go into it. But more information is available on note 10 and 11 of the ACFR. So staff recommends that the board receive the fiscal year 22-23 annual comprehensive financial report. And before I conclude, I would like to turn it over to our auditors to have them go over their section.
Yeah, I'm ready to the next slide. All right, make this kind of brief. I'm Ray Gallardi. I'm the director on the engagement for the water district, and with me is Mike Friday, the principal of the audit for the water district. And we've been here many years, so other than it's been not in person for the last few, but so we're pretty familiar. We just make a brief presentation and really just open it up for any questions instead of going page by page. So what I'm going to cover real quick is the auditor's opinion, some required governance communications, accounting update, and then open it up for any questions. So Nishal already covered it, but we did do an audit of the annual financial statements and did issue an unmodified opinion, which means that your financial statements are correct in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. So that's the highest level of service that any CPA firm can provide you, and you have the highest level of assurance provided. This, I didn't realize it was going to be that small up there. Let me look at mine. It is a summary. You should have in your packet, I believe, a draft letter, which is a required governance communication. And this is just really a summary of that. There's not a lot to note. The purpose for us to come to a board and report is just to update you from anything that may have changed from our planning of the audit, and nothing changed. Oops. Can I go backwards? Nothing changed for that. So we didn't have to change the scope in the audit. Everything went as planned. And all of the significant accounting policies of the district are described in note 1 to the financial statements. And I'll go over it a little later, but real brief that there weren't really any significant changes to the accounting policies. It's been pretty consistent year over year. We are required to let you know that there are estimates in the financial statements and that we've reviewed those and that we're comfortable with those estimates. Primarily, it's your depreciable lives on your capital assets. And other than that, it's the fact that OPEB and pension have actuarial valuations that use estimates. So those are the major ones that are used in your financials. And then we always like to report whether or not we've had any difficulties encountered in performing the audits, that you know if there was a delay, if why we're this late has had something to do with management or staff, and it did not. We had no significant difficulties in doing the audit. And we also didn't have any disagreements with management over accounting pronouncements or rules that they had to go out and get another opinion for, or that we had to do further research. So that was, a good performance on that side. We have no uncorrected misstatements. So anything that we did find, we posted journal entries for. And of all the journal entries, there weren't that many that were made. We decreased your net income by $65,000. So it was a pretty small, as far as when you scope of things, when you talk about making audit adjustments, they were small. It was already brought up that we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the internal controls. And as a concluding matter, we will seek a legal letter from district council. And then at the end of the conclusion of the audit, we will actually get a management representation letter. So those are a couple pieces that are open. Okay. That summarizes those. The accounting pronouncements, the one policy that did change was under GASB 96. It had to do with subscription-based information technology agreements. So similar to last year where we implemented a lease standard, that if you have leases where you're committed to something for a longer term than 12 months, you're now required to book a right of use asset and a right of use liability. Now they're going after intangible things with information technology agreements. So if your Tyler system or DocuWare had commitments that you couldn't get out of, and you were committed to, several years, and we would have to book an asset and a liability to reflect that. You don't have any current agreements that fit under that criteria. They're all cancelable or short-term agreements renewed annually. So no changes there. We just have to add a disclosure that you have a policy on it. The pronouncements coming up in the next few years are one on accounting for changes of errors and changes in financials, and then on compensated absences. So those will be addressed when those are applicable to the district. Normally there's a slide here on recommendations, but again, we didn't find anything that we have to recommend is for changes in internal controls. So that's a good testimony for the work that the district does. We do want to just make mention of that there's going to be a new audit standard that's applicable for next year's audit for June 30th, 2024. And really it has to do with IT again and estimates. And the next slide just kind of shows a little bit of what's changed. It's just that the standards are recognizing the impact of of information technology and computer systems and how things are operating. They want us to take a deeper dive into how that IT is producing numbers that then go into the financials. So there are going to be some enhanced auditing requirements. There could be a little bit of an increased cost related to that if we have to bring on an IT consultant to come in and assess the systems that the district uses. So that'll be coming up for next year's audit, and we'll discuss that with Nishal and Mr. Stolt when we have to address what the complexities are involved. And that is all that we have as far as going over what we're required to communicate. And then really just leaving it up for questions, because I know that the financial statements are large when you have an annual comprehensive report, and there may be questions on some of the notes or.
Do you have any questions from any members of the board?
In your letter, you put a bunch of figures in there, but one side looked the same and the other side, they look the same as each side looked the same as the other one. Is the purpose of that?
Are you talking about the columns look the same?
Yeah,
the
the
numbers?
columns,
So
yeah.
that's the journal entries. So that's going to be accounting language now. We have a debit side and a credit side. So
Right.
that's why the two columns look the same.
Okay, nothing wrong with these, or was there something?
No.
Or y'all just took them out for us to see?
We're required to technically show you what journal entries were made to the financial statements so that you know what your internal ones, what kind of changes we make. Some of those may look larger than what I said. It only changed that income by 65,000 because we know going into the audit that we're booking the OPEB changes and the pension changes, because those reports are done kind of later in the game. So we get a trial balance, we book those entries. The other entry that may look large, but really isn't, it's more of a presentation issue, is because of the reclamation project being a business type activity on your government-wide financials, we're required to eliminate anything that's considered intercompany. So there was like last year, there was 500,000 that was paid down on a temporary loan to the reclamation project. We eliminate it, so it's just reported and presented differently than your books. And so it looks like a large adjustment, but it really isn't. It's a presentation matter.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
I'm looking at page 71 of our agenda packet. It's on the principal property taxpayers in Monterey County.
Is it part of the statistical section?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The list, and my question is, so it lists the principal property taxpayers in the county, and my question is, the assessed values, have they been impacted by Prop 13?
I directly can't answer that question. The statistical section is not actually audited by us. It is reviewed for consistency and that there's not any material errors from what we understand about the information. But this actually comes from Monterey County's annual comprehensive financial report.
Okay,
And they don't really have a lot of, you don't really have footnotes related to this to indicate that. So
Okay.
I'm not sure.
okay, be another way to find it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question. It's the bottom of page 61, which is the report on this. And it seemed like I've seen over the years this comment often in accordance with the financial statements and president, all real estate, in accordance with general study, audit did not identify any deficiencies in the internal control and that the auditor is considered to be material weaknesses. But it seems to me consistently there are journal entry changes to correct something that was in the books erroneously or misdescribed or something. Is that kind of a common finding in audit work?
That there's journal entries or that there's no significant deficiencies?
No, that
Just
there
clarify.
are, there are deficiencies, but not material.
Okay, so there are common that there are journal entries and we
Okay.
evaluate journal entries every time. You're right. We look at a journal entry and we say, why did we have to post it? If we have to post an entry, is there a deficiency in the internal control that the staff didn't catch that change? And like I mentioned on the GASB 75 and 68 for OPEB and pension, we are aware ahead of time that those entries aren't booked. The workbook that creates the journal entries is prepared by staff. We're just simply posting it to our trial balance. So we do not consider that a deficiency. Then there's several other little tiny ones. The one about clearing the internal balances, again, another thing that just, it's a presentation. We do not consider that an issue that they if we had them do it. Some of them, there's not accounts numbers that the district has in their trial balance that need to be kind of done in the books just to get the two sets of financials together. So of the journal entries, net income was impacted by 65,000. We would not consider that material. And we normally book those just as a matter of to get the presentation correct.
But would you, should our staff create a certain accounting categories so that they do capture these things in the future? And so then, I don't know, it's not a gotcha thing. I'm not trying to say that at all.
No,
It's just,
I mean, like I said, there was an accrued interest, one of the entries, there was accrued interest that got, I think it was supposed to be reversed with an accrued interest agree with a statement. That could have been something maybe they would have caught, but no, there's really not anything in here, especially if you look at the title and it says reclassifying journal entry. That is simply for presentation purposes. It has nothing to do with what the district does. They're really small entries. It's just that some of them we book because it's easier to draft the financials and cash flows and all the things that follow by making those corrections. But we do evaluate it and say, is there an internal control deficiency that needs to be corrected? And if there was, we would report that to you.
and your conclusion is there's no correction in the accounting system needs to be made in
No.
order as a result of what you're
Correct.
identifying. Okay.
But when I
That's
brought
kind
up
of
the
my
new
question.
standards for next year that are gonna take a deeper dive into estimates and IT, then that's one of the things that they're predicting out of that, maybe that we come up with something on the IT side that may need to be corrected, but not for this year. We didn't notify
Okay.
anything.
Okay. Thank you. I'm satisfied.
Any other questions?
Yeah, David, on page 13 of the extensive report. It's the economic factors and next year's budget.
Yeah.
Come here when you're there.
Page 13.
Yes.
Part of the
Yeah,
management.
good
Yeah,
paper.
we're at 60s.
And I realize this is a projecting document, not so much the actual audit for 22, 23, but that third paragraph regarding the Measure J costs, my recollection, those numbers aren't right. Do we care for this, for purposes of this document? I mean, for example, it says third phase of the work, it was projected to be 1.3 million. This is not even including filing the actual action. Those numbers, that's not right. is it?
I think those numbers are coming from our latest Measure J report that was presented to the district. We will take another look at it. But yeah, that's the report that the report that's presented at the Finance and Administration Committee, the Measure J report. I think that's where we got those numbers. Again, this is a draft, so if there's minor adjustments, then we can still do it.
Yeah, my concern only is that, I mean, I know it's expensive, but it wasn't this expensive. I remember these finance and administration meetings. I don't, and it could just be the way that number is being described. I mean, anybody who would read that last sentence would think that wouldn't even include filing the action and just simply the what is it, the resolution of necessity. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't those, I don't think those are right. I don't know. I just don't know if we want that kind of.
Yeah, it's not clear what it includes.
Yeah, and it seems overinflated, so just having these numbers floating around anywhere,
Yep.
So you would want that clarified because it's also part of, I believe we have it as a subsequent event footnote. We're always required also to disclose things that maybe happened after June 30th of 23 that could financially impact the
saw that.
statements. And so we use similar wording. So whichever wording gets clarified, and we will update that before this goes final
Yeah.
and be consistent.
No, that's it. I just thought that that descriptor and that amount of money was not matching in my recollection. That's all.
No, good recollection.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, she said, the descriptor, we're talking about the actual dollar value.
Yeah.
So we just asked you to scrub that number.
Yep.
Because that is important, because once we adopt that number.
I mean, I realize it's a projection, it's not a binding number, but we have, I mean, the finance committee is looking at these numbers and you're doing all, I mean.
Well, the number in that part of the audit is not technically audited. Again, it's management's discussion and analysis. We review it for consistency. But the subsequent event footnote is a part of our audit. So we definitely do want that to be correct, because you're right. If someone reads that going forward and thinks that's what your upcoming costs are, they may make a different conclusion about that. So
Right, not to mention when you do the audit for the following fiscal year.
then we have to update the footnote.
Yeah, these are forecasted numbers, some of the numbers there, and we will take another look.
Thanks, that was my only comment, Chair.
Thank you.
This is excellent, by the way. That's my other comment. I think this is excellent. I mean, you can easily jump to, this report is, for me, I can read it. That's pretty good. Because this isn't my skill set.
Great.
Thank you.
Once you've heard from the public, your action is just to receive the report.
Mhm. Any comments from the public?
Chair Anderson, I see no raised hands.
Okay. Then we received the report. Thank you. And thank you for a very nice presentation.
Good job.
Couple small edits, should I just email it to you?
Yeah.
Okay, where are we?
And just so I know, I mean, the final version of that report, will that be uploaded to the website or?
Yeah, so after, yeah, it goes on the district website. So what we do is we finalize all the comments and then it goes to the GFOA and then that version gets uploaded to the district website.
So that way you get your award to go. back to
Reward, I like that.
Reward, yes. Reward for all the hard work that we do, yes.
Okay. Thank you. We just got to accept, right? So we gotta make a motion or
No,
whatever.
you don't need a motion. You received it.
Okay, done. All right, what's next?
Item 13.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 13, there was some confusion among our viewership on just the denotation at the header of the staff note that says this action does not constitute a project as defined by CEQA. And the action that you're about to undertake is not a project under CEQA, but the allocation process was determined to be a project. And so this is correct as stated, but you're actually taking action on something that is a project under CEQA. So I just want to make sure there's no confusion there. And basically this goes to the item was included in the packet. And it is an addendum to the Pure Water Monterey supplemental EIR. And so I did include the URL to go to the supplemental EIR online, so you could consider that in concert with this addendum, taking the whole body of work into mind as you make a decision. The process of the water allocation was determined to be a project. You may recall through a technical memorandum that was presented to you back in August. Because it was determined to be a project, the path of least resistance going forward was to write an addendum to the SEIR. That's what you have today for consideration. And if you did glance at it, it's completely straightforward that in effect, all previous work had done all the work that was necessary to consider supply and demand and allocation of that new supply. So with the advent of the Pure Water Monterey expansion coming online in approximately 22 months from now, we want to be able to have known quantities of water in the hands of each jurisdiction approximately midway in the construction schedule. So that would be, think of it as September of this year. So by the end of the summer. That process is what we call the allocation process. So in effect, we look at the additional water brought by the expansion, which is 2,250 acre feet. We've analyzed it for drought impacts, which may say that the average available inclusive of drought and the incidence of drought over time over a 59-year data set would say that the new supply is really 2,105 acre feet. Of that, we know there's a known amount that has to offset unlawful diversions on the river. So we'll make a certain estimate for that. And then the remainder will be, let's say, something like 1,600 acre feet. That's what could be allocated. We don't intend to allocate the full remainder. Instead, we intend to, based on the population forecast, the 25-year population forecast, and the 25-year job growth, rate of growth applied to non-residential water use. We've looked at what each jurisdiction appears to need based on the AMBAG growth forecast. Then we've identified the disconnect between some of the RENA housing numbers and the AMBAG growth forecast. And we're kind of splitting the two down the middle. The important thing is we're not allocating 100%, which means we don't have to be 100% correct. We're allocating enough to get the jurisdictions on the move so that we can then look how fast they grow, how those growth assumptions match up with the 25-year growth forecast upon which all of these were based. So we continue to wait for the county's housing element draft to hit the streets so we know how much we're talking about. And I have told a few of the jurisdictions, like I met with City Manager Monterey last week, and I said, you guys have programmed so much housing in the old Fort Ord, which doesn't impact water use in the Cal-Am service area. But as soon as we were to announce that there's water available in the Cal-Am service area, a lot of that housing is going to come back. So one of the difficulties we have is, trust issues with the RENA numbers, trust issues with the housing elements and where they say that housing is going to go. I had a meeting earlier today where the proposed roughly 1,400 units in the unincorporated county along the Highway 68 corridor is getting its opposition up already, and so we don't really know where the housing is going to go. But from the standpoint of the us's versus them's, we do know that some of what's been programmed to be in Marina Coast, the old Fort Ord, will really end up in the Cal-Am. So we've got to be ready for that as well. But the key to our success, as I said earlier, is not allocating all of the water. So you don't have to be correct. You figure out who's actually growing, who's committed to housing, who's actually doing it. And then you look backwards and you say, okay, who needs a new allocation based on growth and where is that growth really happening? So we'll be in a pretty good position to go, I think, by September. By March 1st, we're expecting the Army, Navy, and Coast Guard to have their materials back to us. I've touched base with the airport. They're supposed to be back to us. And then I'm kind of hoping right around the same time, we'll see a draft housing element for the county. So we can just bring in some of those expectations and then we'll meet as a TAC and then eventually as the policy advisory committee to sign off on these allocations. So this step was to meet the environmental requirements. The recommendation is, it's actually a term of art and CEQA to consider the addendum. So you're being asked to consider and approve the addendum. And then we will file a notice of determination with the state clearinghouse, sometime this week.
So do we have questions now about what our charges? Director
I
Ryder?
have a couple of questions. By withholding some of the allocation, well, let me state my concern. What I don't want to see happen is that we have an allocation across the various jurisdictions, and then something changes and we need to pull a part of an allocation away from a city. That's going to be bad storyline.
Exactly.
So, okay, so then that's
That's
my
why we're
concern.
holding on water.
Okay, that's why I would have.
That's why we're holding on to it.
Justification for that. Second, what's your prognosis of getting information from the county? Because, I mean, they're slow on a lot of things. Sorry, pardon me.
That troublemaker right there got the same question I got. Put a deadline on it.
Yeah, what is that?
It's going to be months to put a deadline from months.
No, we're gonna move ahead if they don't answer. That's my deadline.
Well, I guess my question is, I mean, if you don't get the information, you just run the best guess.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. We
And the
can't-
county knows it's the best guess, so they can't hold us to it if we're.
No, and the county's probably gonna get hit with a builder's remedy.
That's
Somebody walking right through that door before they're even ready to release a draft. So,
I call it the builder's revenge.
It's horrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
but from our
It's embarrassing.
standpoint,
It's embarrassing.
it does matter because the unincorporated county, prior to this go around with housing, with the RENA, there's a sub element to the general plan for Carmel Valley. And that sub element spoke to housing. And it was 132 units or something that you could kind of address. And some of those units were going to be on the old airport, which is now a nursery. Some of those units are going to get taken up with the Rancho Cañada Villages project. But even September Ranch will meet the need for some of the units. But all of that's changed with this housing element and the conversations with the land watches of the world and others say you need housing closer to the jobs. So they've looked all the way down the 68 corridor, Olmsted Road, that unincorporated corridor is now getting programmed for housing. Is it really in alignment with it doing a 25-year metropolitan transportation plan? Maybe not. And so there's going to be this classic trying to please one group by doing the right thing, putting housing where it's needed closer to where the jobs are. And then it's going to be opposed by, a typical 68 coalition kind of thing where this road can't accommodate 1,400 units. And it's not just the unincorporated counties, but the element that the city of Monterey did really increased housing here on South Boundary Road and Old Fort Ord. So then you look at the combination of those numbers. And then Delray Oaks only has one buildable lot left in Delray Oaks. So most of their housing to meet the RENA is going to have to go to Old Fort Ord. So you start adding up all of those. And this is where my comment about Seaside, they've got plans in place already for Campus Town and Net Ascent. And they're very, very close to their new housing stock. Monterey's not, they've got 3,654 units And they programmed a bunch of them now in South Boundary Road, which land use organizations don't like, but when you take those three together, Delray Oaks and a little bit of Seaside, but mostly it's Monterey, Delray Oaks, and the unincorporated county. Can you really fit 3,000 housing units along Highway 68? That's not our problem, but we have to think about it in terms of, is it likely to happen? Or is some of that likely to shift back into the CalAm service area? If we're able to lift the moratorium on setting of meters, well, we need to bet on ourselves that we're gonna do that because we have enough water to do that. But yeah, we're just playing the game of which unknown is unknowable, or which one can you assume a little bit? And it changes the way we would allocate water if we're trying to be, perfectly correct, but we're not gonna need to be. So.
Well, and doesn't Marina Coast have a role to play here? Where do they come in to play? Because a lot of that Fort Ord property is under Marina Coast water.
Well, and that's really it. So they have their Fort Ord allotment. They've got the projections of housing units that are going to come into the old Fort Ord. Campus Town's probably a good example where the Fort Ord allotment is not enough to do the full build out at Campus Town. And so the creative solutions that they've come up with the in lieu recharge program and using some credits, yes, it applies to Ascent, but it applies a lot more in terms of getting water in to these other projects. And so I think Marina Coast needs to deal with the demands on their own. But do I think that all of the housing that's being talked about going into Marina Coast area instead of CalAm's area, we can't just assume that to be true. We have to assume that if water's available, they will prefer to build downtown and upzone.
And am I correct? And Marina Coast does not have an allocation process. We do. So the burden is really on us to do a planning process that takes into consideration these options, these unknowns.
Yeah.
And do the best we can. I mean, I guess it's.
Yeah, and the reasons for it are different than the reasons that we used to do it. It used to be a scarce resource where we had to make some tough decisions, say, this is all you got and there's no more. Now it's more of the power of this process is something doesn't get built without the water permit. So we know what's being built. And so you're able to get in front of where's my future demand materializing? And then how soon am I going to need future demand? Without that, your only tools are how much water goes into the system and how much is delivered to customers. But you need to say, well, what am I going to need 20 years from now? And being able to count it as it goes out also tells you how fast you're moving. So we're keeping the system in place because it's made us so much more knowledgeable about how water is used and where it goes in the community so that we don't have to just, eyeball it. But at this go around, there's more than enough water to do what most jurisdictions want to do.
And through the chair, my last question is, does CalAm have a role in this process of, guessing?
Well, so, we're completely divergent on our supply and demand analyses right now. It'd be great if phase 2 of the proceeding in front of the Public Utilities Commission resolves all of that. Did I hear a chuckle? But at the end of the day,
in the first place.
Yeah, that is how we got here in the first place. At the end of the day, CalAm's invited to be part of the process, but it's really our process. It's a permitting process. It's not going to change the amount of water that's needed ultimately.
Okay.
Dave, this, how frequent, how often do you figure you'll have to do a relook, taking stock of what's actually been built versus what we project?
So
3 years?
No, well, what we're trying to do is, we've taken a third-party forecast, 25-year forecast that gives us, if it was a straight line, that gives you an average annual growth rate. All of our project financing's 30 years, so we take that, and we look out 30 years. The data that we have is actually 59 years, and so we play with that with some sensitivity scenarios, but we want a 30-year look. And so what we'd like to do is say, all right, how much is needed in the first 10 years? We do have a number of folks who are pushing back saying, well, demand is so pent up, we're going to grow super fast right out of the gates. You're not going to grow 10 years worth right out of the gates. And so we'll be able to assess the growth rate, 3 years out. We'll be in a position where the annual reporting of the state, not annual, the supply and demand reporting of the state's on a 5-year cycle. So we'll always be looking at it, but the AMBAG growth forecasts are on a 4-year cycle. So that's our cycle right now is, okay, new information. What does that mean to what we said 4 years ago? But then we'll try to line that up with the 5-year cycles for the urban water management plans and so forth. But we look at it almost all the time. If you see something coming in through the permits, it's like, wow, there was pent up demand. Then we'll probably look at it more frequently. But we're trying to get 10 years worth of water into people's hands so that those jurisdictions who grow faster still have enough time to get to a point where you can look backwards rather than, spinning your wheels every 2 years. Here's enough for 2 years. So, but I think we may end up with some pushback on, my planning horizon's longer. Give me 15 years, give me 20 years worth. And so it's a negotiation.
All this is going to be dependent upon, how fast the work can get done.
See that
And-
now you're bringing in reality. Are there enough
Contractors.
Are there enough planners at the county to
Yeah,
review
yeah.
plans?
Materials.
Materials. Yeah, there's practical limitations to this and money. Developer money. So
There might be a reality to where'd she go? Builder's revenge, because they may be the first ones out of the chute.
So with this, if you read the recommendation, one of the things is that you're also making a finding that there is no substantial evidence that there would be significant impacts that would require a subsequent EIR.
And on that point, in fact, on anything related to this addendum to the SEIR, there's no foreseeable stakeholders out there who would take issue with any of this.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the principal issues was supply and demand considered in its entirety with the first EIR? And it was. And so then when the supplemental came along, they're relying on the first one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big issue.
And responding to that, there were no comments on the draft and there's no public here. I think you can take that as an indication that there is no constituency that has a local concern.
I didn't feel like sharing tonight. Well, that's what I'm saying, right, at this meeting, right, because you'll get, after we, months down the road, people have problems with it, but this is the time to have talk to us so we can consider that feedback.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it does not have to go out for circulation. That's
Correct.
That is correct.
Well,
okay.
that's been noticed.
Yeah, it's in the staff report. Just making sure the public hear it.
Well,
Public comment?
Yeah, addenda
This
are,
may be a good point to open it to public.
yeah, addenda are
Yes,
very
that's-
different animals. You can do an addendum to somebody else's EIR,
Right.
never having any role in the first one. It's just,
so let's open it up to the public.
There's
Public
plenty-
here who's interested in this, not necessarily in the addendum to the EIR process, but did want to let the director know that although Seaside's housing element is very close to adoption, the city took a strategic approach to getting its housing element adopted. So we also have a pending general plan update that actually hopes for more housing. So we would like to make sure that you are considering that when you're considering an allocation to the city. And I noted that you said there appears to be a need. I have not heard yet from Seaside staff, although I might not have, who you're working with in the city of Seaside. But if you wouldn't mind just popping me a little email or something so I can make sure that the city staff is up to speed on that allocation process. I think we have a huge interest in that because Seaside is one of the very unusual jurisdictions out there where we have 3 different water purveyors. We get Marina Coast and those issues. We have Kellyam and those issues, and we have Seaside Union, those issues. It's a rather complicated regulatory structure, and we're really just trying to implement our housing obligations, and that takes sometimes multi-layers of strategic thinking. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would like to point out the Technical Advisory Committee, which Stephanie Locke will run the meetings through, are typically planners from the cities. From the larger cities, it's usually somebody out of the planning department. For the smaller cities, it's usually the city manager. So I know she's got one from Seaside that the name may have changed, but there's somebody who's involved.
Anybody else? Is there anyone online?
Chair Anderson, I see no raised hands.
Thank you.
Is a motion in order?
I believe so.
I so move,
To approve?
move approval.
I'll second it.
Okay.
And just for clarification on the motion, does that include the findings that there's substantial evidence of no significant impacts and none of the conditions in the call for preparation of subsequent EIR have occurred?
Yes, I guess I could have read the whole thing.
Because those are findings of the board, I wanted to make sure that those were incorporated.
That's the intention. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Let's have a vote. This requires, no. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adopted.
Okay, item 14. While action, you're basically taking action on something that hasn't changed substantially from last year. When you took action last year, there was a significant change to the policy that spoke a lot more towards district goals and aligning district goals with certain industry groups like aqua and water reuse. That wasn't in the plan previously. The Legislative Advocacy Committee has not seen this year's plan because it came out of last year's committee. But I realize that we have adopted it every year. So, and this is the time that we adopt it. So it's unchanged except for the photo of our senator at the federal level and a few
Right.
other minor edits. So it's just a kind of a readoption of a prior document.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I had a quick question on, without details, on page 112. It shows the grant money that's been arranged for out of the federal agencies and the state agencies. I believe they're both, yes. Are these grants have been applied for? Are these grants that have been approved generally?
Yeah, these are all approved and utilized. The one that's outstanding that I think is in there. Yeah, you have page numbers.
It's 112,
Yeah.
111.
112.
Yeah. well, those were
Yeah, so what's not highlighted here?
California.
So you see the 4
This is
bulleted
local.
ones under the state of California strategy.
Yeah.
Those all exist. The first 2 are ours. And the third one is Monterey One Waters. And then you may hear things like the Olivier Street project or the Lake Aguajita project
Mhm.
in Monterey. There was some KSBW news. One of those is from our IRWM grant. The other one's from a environmental earmark that Monterey One Water helped the city of Monterey get. So there's a whole variety of these things around.
The one from Seaside,
Yeah.
that is from this too, right? Yeah.
The one that we showed at
Yeah,
the
the
last
one
board
that-
meeting, yeah, that
yes.
was from the IRWM program. So almost all of these that are referred to exist. On the prior page, under federal, you'll see discussion about the Water Resources Development Act, WRDA, in the second bullet under item 1. That's $20 million for Monterey Peninsula water and wastewater. None of that has been secured yet. And that's part of this year's push at the federal level is to get, and they usually happen in 2 steps. One is a little bit of money in order to draft a contract with the Army Corps of Engineers that leads to then the design and construction for bigger money. But we've not come up with the kind of the roadmap to how to get that money out yet. So it's 20 million that's been authorized for us that we're now, so we've got, hopefully when we go back to Aqua in DC, not hopefully, I mean, it's on the schedule, I'll have a 4-page leave behind on a series of small projects that that word of money is going to be directed at. So.
And we are looking at some for ASR from federal level.
So just had that discussion today as well with our Washington lobbyist, and he's going to send me some information on, there's 3 different programs that that affect ASR.
There's a reference to State Water Board weighing in on State Water Board regulations. Is that about water rights? Is that about potable?
Oh,
resources?
it's a whole gamut. So
A lot of different issues.
about 6 years ago, there was an assembly bill passed to try to address statewide subsidies for low-income water ratepayers. And some of the work got pushed down to a professor out of UCLA, and then they made recommendations back, and they drafted some proposed regulations. And then our industry groups weigh in on those. There was some water rights legislation last year that the industry groups asked us to weigh in on. But back, like Prop 1, which was a huge water bond, we acted on behalf of Senator Monning's office to tell him whether it was a good deal for the Central Coast or not. So our role with some of these, it could be legislation, or it could be the promulgation of new rules that would, we would comment on. So it's been the whole
range of issues.
range of, yeah. So the recommendation on
It's
that was
just-
just simply to review and adopt.
Move we adopt.
I second.
Any other questions? Any comments? Are we good to go? Okay. From the public. Any,
Chair Anderson, I see no raised hands.
thank you. Let's have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it is adopted.
This final item is a discussion item, and it's just to check your pulse and get general direction on how you want to go about addressing strategic goals for the year. Recall last year we did a offsite meeting at Asilomar, which was a very good experience, I think.
Yeah.
But you may be so satisfied with that you don't want to do it again for another year or two. Or if you do, we can do something like that. It'll be a public meeting if we do it. One of the proposals during chair, vice chair was just update the ones from last year, or send them around and get your independent viewpoint. And then another suggestion that Chair Vice Chair was, no, we should meet. So it's really for you to discuss among yourselves and decide how you want to go about it.
So don't we have two board members who have never been, who were not involved in the previous discussions, right? Were you? You were on the, okay,
were all
just
there.
one then.
No.
Yeah, I know, I thought we
He
all
was
were
here.
We
here.
were all here. I mean, I mean, yeah.
I'll be quick though. I still think we should meet. I don't think that the reason that, two were missing, even though we were there.
I don't know if you should take this personally or not. I think,
No, I think it's important that we meet. You don't have to go over the same ground, but you know what ground you went over before and you move from there, or you solidify where we at and going forward. That's just my.
I think everybody had a really good experience.
Mhm.
And we had members of the public who were there as well. And I think that worked out really well too. So my hope is that we would do it another person-to-person, face-to-face opportunity again.
Without a facilitator.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, we had a facilitator with Dave.
Yeah, but once you got going, you facilitated yourself
I
really
think you're
well. So,
Well, this but it does play, I mean, you did facilitate.
Yeah,
He, led the band, and then, the band was doing pretty well on its own.
No, I thought it was a really good experience. So if you as board members have the time and inclination, I think it's better to do it than not do it.
I agree.
You can come in with, hey, here are the 3 things that are most important to me this year. And see where your common ground is. It's just an opportunity. Can even be collegial, get a free meal.
That's the real challenge.
I hope we can do it at the Solmar again too.
Yeah.
It was pretty
It's a good spot.
affordable. So.
Oh, good. In terms of timing, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This would be after the budget?
No,
No,
should be before
so
the
we
budget.
usually like to do it before the budget, because if there's a big initiative that informs the budget, we'd like to know. Obviously, we've been dancing around the Measure J costs. And
Right.
we should talk that through a little more seriously.
Drilling wells.
Drilling wells. So I have an offer from a colleague water agency who might be interested in cost sharing and drilling a well if they can store in the basin. And it's a very good idea, but we don't have a means for them to extract from the basin. So the question has gone kind of like, do you think you have a means to extract? So it's a very early stage, but that's a $5 to $6 million investment. So it's just a good time to, blue sky think a little bit.
And just to clarify for me, if we're going to talk at all about pending lawsuits and obligations around that, there's some limits of what we can discuss in public.
In open session.
So
Right, but it's still an open meeting. So
Well, it depends on how you structure the agenda. You
Yeah.
can have a planning session that has a closed session attached to it, as long as we abide by the Brown Act and specify what it is that you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, good point.
Okay.
Is there a reason why why this particular meeting couldn't be Brown Act compliant closed meeting?
Just strategic planning in and of itself is not a safe harbor.
Right.
I see.
Oh,
So
You have to tie it to specific litigation or labor matters in general.
I see. Okay.
it's, the heading is, strategic planning or, just an overview, but it's still a regular meeting.
Right.
Right, that makes sense. It's still a meeting of the group, so.
all right, so we'll send around some dates and try to find something that works.
But I would like that last part of the closed session added on there, where we can have a few more minutes to digest some of the stuff that we're going through instead of these quick after meetings, my Warriors on, I'm missing them. Yeah.
Like the
Okay.
Niners do.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Too
Wow.
Hey, let's close the meeting because he's about to cry.
Like Gavin Steele's fan. Yeah, but.
Oh, the me, you know, stand a little later than we. I just like to see it.
I didn't hear you.
So could we just continue forward now?
Yep, so I've got direction, and that's the last item on the open meeting agenda.
I have one question on item 21, which is information only, and it's just a suggestion. It's on 141. It has to do with conservation program data. These reports come in monthly, and they give a monthly report. And so January is this month, and last month we had December, and last time we had November. What I'm inquiring about is, can staff put in a simple chart to show the numbers over several months, how they accumulate or whatever, just so we get a sense of volume, because month by month, I don't get a sense of any trend, any significance, anything I want to even pay attention to, because it's only 1 month at a time. So I'm just suggesting, is there a way to kind of figure out how to draft some kind of table that might bring this information forward? That's all I'm asking.
It exists.
Okay.
And I know that in the past, we've used the monthly report for the end of the year to show the entire total for the year. So I'm not sure what's missing in this one. But I do see where it says like rebate information for January will be included in the March program report. There's like an accumulated impact of all the rebates in acre feet saved, and so, but it's not here in the staff report. So
Well, and
I
maybe
don't
it
know
could be
if
just a
that's
quarterly report, so that we just gotta get a little summary picture better than month by month. That's all I'm inquiring about.
And I did enjoy reading item 22, obviously, we are still waiting. Jonathan, I don't know if it's Jonathan Lear or you, David, you know what I'm gonna say. I want the field trip. I want the field trip. I know that it's winter, I got it. But,
You
Yeah,
gotta,
no,
you gotta
we-
wait till we're not walking through mud.
I just, they got stepstones out there. I want the field trip. I want to see this place. So keep that in mind, Jonathan. I don't know if we can at least get it on calendar, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna strap on a feedback popcorn and go enjoy the show. I want to see it.
We'll come by your
Am I the only
office.
one who wants to see it? Maybe I'll just go. by
No.
myself.
That would not be so easy, I think.
I don't think so.
We'll have Maureen pick you up and take you out to ASR and.
For sure. Thanks, Maureen. I appreciate that.
Yeah, she's on.
All right.
Madam Chair, I think you can adjourn the
To close.
regular meeting.
Yes. Yes, we are adjourned.
and